This is DJ.
And this is Ish.
And this is
Season 6 of
Pero Let Me Tell You.
Literally. And I'm like, so real estate? Nah, it's not real estate. It's like we're connecting the dots and meeting meaningful people. Content. And you're just like, you don't have a job, do you?
Bitcoin, bro.
Bitcoin, bro.
Bitcoin.
You're saving your Bitcoin in your mom's basement in Kendall, and you just admit it. Like, you don't
Which
have a
in
job.
and of itself is an accomplishment, having a basement in South Florida.
That
in and of itself is an accomplishment.
Yeah.
So, listeners, before we get any further, I actually started recording, but I didn't tell them that they were recording it. So we're continuing our
Illegal. No, I'm kidding.
we're continuing our long tradition of having people on the show who are way funnier than us.
Yes.
So we have, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Darian, I think we have with us the first female comedian.
We certainly do.
She is, yes.
And we've had many comedians on the show,
Yes.
so shame on us for taking
I know.
7 seasons to finally
Yeah,
have
but
a
it's-
female
but
on the
it's
show.
Sexist pig.
But it's also, but it's not our fault because we know, as we all know, women are not funny. So it's
If anybody knows it, it's me.
we have with
tell
us the one and only Brittany Brave.
Yay.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I would like to correct your intro just to fact check you really quickly. I am not only the first female comedian to ever do your podcast, I'm the first female comedian to ever exist.
Absolutely.
It's true. You don't see it, guys, but she actually time traveled. So she's older than Joan Rivers and Phyllis Diller combined.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you moisturize.
I do. Well,
Yes.
it's cum. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Is this a clean pod? No, it's fine.
No, but see,
way.
you're just organic, and that's I appreciate.
So is my
that.
moisturizer.
There you go. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. You're organic with your
Right.
moisturizer, so
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Right.
Yes.
A lot of these Miami girls are out here getting surgical procedures, and I'm just going au naturel.
Exactly.
With bodily excretions.
Exactly.
Yes.
Upcycling.
Yes.
Well, actually, you are a Miami girl, from Kendall. We were talking about that. So funny story before Brittany says her origin story. Her and I go way back. We go back to a couple of months ago. We were at an event for the women's
month
the
ago.
League of Women Voters, and I see her in the elevator at the Rusty Pelican, and she's like, "I've never been here," and I'm like, "You've never been here?" Like, once upon a time, everybody got married here. And I was there thinking you were like not a Miami native, and you're like, I'm from Kendall, like raised in Kendall. I'm like, and you've never been to the Rusty Pelican?
I got so 305 shaded by
You
you
did.
in that elevator. Shoot me. I don't remember ever going to Rusty Pelican until this lovely event. And we crossed paths and like, you like slightly wouldn't let it go. You were like, you went full Miami.
Yeah.
You were like, bro, for real? Are you even from Kendall if you've never been to Rusty Pelican? And I was like, who is this man? I had never been more from New York in my life. I was like, yeah, I spent time in New York. I was born there, okay? Like, okay. So, and then now I've been to Rusty Pelican, and it's phenomenal, and I understand why people get married.
Yeah.
It's a cool spot. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
next time you can be the person in the elevator saying,
Oh my God, I'm going to do it.
yes.
I'm going to hang around Rusty Pelican and look for, like, white people that look like they're not from here. And when they're like, where's the elevator? I'm going to be like, have you, like, not been here? This is, like, a Miami staple.
The Rusty Pelican shade. That's what we're
The
going to
Rusty Pelican. They're going to be like, we're from Kentucky. And I'm going to be like, still, like, you're a loser if you've never been. That's the most Miami thing in the world. Miami loves to act like it's the only city that ever existed. Miami loves to tell anybody from around the world, no matter what city they're from. They could be from Abu Dhabi to Ottawa, Canada, to New Jersey, somewhere in New Jersey. Miami likes to act like, okay, I understand you've been around the world and you've lived in 11 different countries. You don't know Miami. Like, we love to, like, one-up everybody with
But are
Miami.
we wrong?
But there's no lies detected.
Yeah.
It's true. And in a lot of ways, Miami isn't like other places. But we do love to, like, I love that about Miami natives. We love to claim that we know Miami more than anybody else. Or I understand you've traveled the world and you know 30 different languages.
But let me
But let me
explain to
Listen,
you.
But have you been stuck in rush hour on the Palmetto? I think not.
One of
Have
the-
you been in the elevator at the Rusty Pelican?
Right.
Correct.
One of the biggest insults I would have was when I lived in the Midwest, people would actually ask me if I was from Miami, Ohio, and I'd be like, "What?
What?
Like, excuse me?
Can we all
this
agree that place shouldn't exist?
Do I sound like I'm from Miami, Ohio?
Yeah, like, at all. I even get that people can pick up that I'm from Miami, and I feel like I'm barely Miami, to be honest. I'm much more New York in like my attitude and dialect and everything. And even people will be like, I could tell you were from Miami or somewhere tropical like that or whatever.
From the Caribbean.
From the
somewhere.
Caribbean, you were from like Cuba, right? Like down there in Miami, and I'm like, okay, Kentucky. That's not how a map works.
So tell us, for the two
Yes.
people that don't know. So you were born in New York, New Jersey, and then you were raised
I
here?
don't like to say that out loud.
Oh, okay.
New York, just that's a blanket area.
Okay.
New York.
New York.
In the tri-state area, she was
Yes.
born.
Exactly. Just northeast area.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you were raised here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my whole family lives and resides, will die in Jersey. My relatives are from Italy and Sicily, all over the map, all over there, in various parts of Europe. But my parents honeymooned in Miami and had the time of their life, and they loved it. And then very serendipitously, less than 2 months later, after they got married, like many, many, many years ago, like over 40 years ago now, I think, maybe almost 50. My dad serendipitously got offered a job in Miami, and they loved Miami so much. And they were young, and I wasn't around yet, and they wanted to get the fuck out of New Jersey. I don't blame them. And they're like the only people from my family that have moved anywhere outside of New Jersey.
So everybody else is in Jersey.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, actually, now that I think about it. Like, my family, like, immigrated here from Italy.
Right.
And then since then, they just took claim over Jersey and got a little too comfy there.
So what exit are they from?
Oh, nice. Okay, is it 82 or 89? 82 or 89? Yeah. Well, that's the South Jersey exits, but I have family all over. My family's like herpes. They're all over New Jersey. It's Bergen County, Essex County. They're all over. So yeah, we cover the map. So yeah. We're everywhere.
So she's
their own strain of herpes.
she's Miamian via Jersey. A little detour in Jersey.
A little detour.
A little
Small detour.
It was a weird couple of years in Jersey, but who doesn't have a weird couple of years in Jersey?
Well, that's why Jersey exists.
That's
so
true.
people can have a weird couple of years.
It's true, but you know what? I would also argue that's why the whole state of Florida exists.
No, state of Florida, so you can have a weird existence.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like Florida's a really good place to go to if you want to throw it all away, divorce, go undercover, fly from a pandemic, just ruin it all. Florida's a good destination.
Yeah.
And
the,
Jersey.
And the weirdest thing of Florida is, that saying we always hear, the more north you go, the more south it gets. That couldn't be more true.
Yeah. I have a joke in my act where I'm like, Miami is not Florida. There's Miami, and then there's Florida.
Absolutely.
And Miami and all of its political, social, cultural biases and flaws, all things considered, especially compared to North Florida, it's pretty liberal. It's pretty fluid and open. And I'm like, the farther north you go in Florida, it's less teeth and more guns. Yeah.
Oh, wait. What about the panhandle? That's a whole other...
Forget it. You move from Dale to Yeehaw, and then when you get in the panhandle, you get to bless your heart a little bit. It gets real country.
I think we just found the pull clip for the promo on IG.
Clip it!
Done.
Well, there
done.
you go.
Snip, snip, snip.
Done and done. Oh, Lord.
Vasectomy that clip. No, I'm kidding.
Lot of penis talk in this episode, surprisingly.
No, not surprising.
So I have to say, from seeing your comedy and seeing a lot of your acts, you have, I wouldn't say aggressive, but it's a very in your face sort of comedy style.
Yeah.
Do you feel you got to that style because of your upbringing and your experience, or were you influenced by maybe other comedians, specifically female comedians?
Great question. I don't even think I've thought about that. So this is it's all
This could
happening
be your therapy
in real
session.
time.
I'm gonna light a candle.
It really feels like that. Do you have any crystals?
Not
could-
clean ones.
No.
Same. Yeah. I was about to say so I could put them in inappropriate places.
Right. Yeah.
That's a really good question. I Yeah, so I think I'm a naturally high energy human being. And I think I am a very confrontational human being as well. Which I'm sure some people in my life or that used to be in my life would have not good things to say about that. But I actually think the act of being confrontational is a good thing. I think it gets a negative connotation, but being confrontational literally just means addressing things and being
not taking shit.
not taking shit, grabbing the bull by the horns, addressing things, calling things out. So I think that's naturally embedded in my personality. So I do think when I'm on stage and I'm feeding off the energy of a crowd and there's adrenaline and I'm excited, it can lend itself to being a little more aggressive. I think it's cultural. I am from the Northeast and like the East Coast. I'm from New York and Miami. Those are two very intense, loud, don't fuck around, in your face, high traffic, busy places. So I think that I'm Italian. I think you can tell by my hands. I'm burning calories right now as I talk. It's my cardio. And I will say, I mean, it does come a little bit from my comedic idols. So you had made a joke earlier about Phyllis Diller and Joan Rivers, and like Joan Rivers is literally the background on my phone.
That's a great pick.
Yeah, I love her. Isn't that gorgeous? Yeah. It's so amazing.
Is that from when she guest hosted the Tonight Show?
I think it was one of the times. Yeah. Or maybe actually from when she had her own show. It was one of them. But she was on TV here. Yeah, I mean, I think there is a natural, not to typecast all female comics, but I think in order to cut through the women aren't funny bullshit and get your respect or a little bit, I think we're all a little aggressive and a little gross and a little dirty and a little loud and a little rough around the edges or whatever term people want to use, because I don't think you'll survive if you lack that energy too much a little bit in how you do your business and in how you are on stage, you know?
That's interesting because I mean, I hadn't thought about it until you said it right now, but you know, you think about like the comedians who don't work blue, quote unquote, right? Like the comedians who tend to work a little more clean, and it's your Seinfelds and your Jim Gaffigans, and offhand I cannot think of a female comedian like maybe Rita Rudner, but I think Rita Rudner, it's not even so much that she's working nice, it's that the voice does the heavy lifting for her.
Yes.
So she can say things that are completely inappropriate, but because her voice is this, it disarms you.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I can't think of any female comedian, at least known female comedian, that works, you know, clean, as they say.
Sure. I mean, I think Maria Bamford is pretty, well, I guess not, she curses. So, I mean, also it depends on what you define as clean, too. Like, that drives me crazy whenever we get booked for clean gigs as comedians. We're like, well, what is...
Define clean.
Define clean, you know? And they're like, family friendly. And I'm like, you don't know my family. Like, these words are very friendly in my family. Like, you know, this is normal for my family. But, yeah, I think, again, and I hate to put us in that box, but I do find a trend in the female comedians that... Joan Rivers is a perfect example, just to like use her right now as an example. Like, she was acerbic and loud and dirty and wasn't afraid to use certain words or talk about certain things and dramatic and powerful and whatever. And I do think that contributed to her demanding people pay fucking attention to her and give her respect. I think a little bit of it. And if there's a female comedian or aspiring female comedian listening now, I don't think you need to necessarily do that. But you know.
There's also a different time then, too. Like, if she didn't do that, you know, she
wouldn't have stood a chance.
Yeah, the only other equivalent would be a Phyllis Diller. And even if you look at what she was doing at the time, because, I mean, Phyllis wasn't known for vulgar, you know, or curse words, but she was taking on the house. She was a housewife from hell. So for that time, that was so rebellious.
Yes,
you know, to be that woman who, you know, I hate cleaning and you know, and so she didn't have to be quote unquote vulgar, right? So just to use a blanket statement,
right?
But for the time, she was still being very transgressive.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and I think naturally as being a comedian, there's something countercurrent to you and how you think and how you operate. I think that's what makes you a comedian. You're kind of able to. Good comedians, good stand-up comedians are able to see things differently. Or else if everybody saw things the way a stand-up comedian would, I think we all would be Unabombers, It'd be a weird fucking place to live, and everybody would be doing this, or they wouldn't, and then they'd really need an outlet. And by outlet, I mean outlet mall, probably, to go bomb.
Well, because that's a lot of hoodies.
Exactly.
Yes.
See, you get it. Okay. But so I think there's a natural rebellion to it, or we run a little countercurrent, or we're maybe not the outsiders or outliers, but your thinking pattern is different. Yeah, I think maybe it is like it's just instinctive to be a little more aggressive on stage because you're up against more, maybe. But it's like we're weird. We're weird, especially to be a woman doing this. You're probably a little gross and weird and awkward. Like, I am. I'm disgusting. Yeah.
Would you say, though, this is something we've asked, all the comedians that have been on the show, especially in the last couple of years, and especially because your brand, as we said, is a little bit in your face, aggressive. Mm-hmm. Do you find it challenging, or do you ever, in this day and age, censor yourself because of how sensitive we've become and the whole cancel culture thing? And, comedians, I feel comedians have always been sort of on the front lines of things, that they can make fun of things in comedy and in humor in a way that nobody else could. And that's sort of the beauty of it. Yeah. And now even comedians are, there's comedians that will not go to college campuses and will not do certain shows. Yeah. Do you ever feel that pressure? Is there ever a time that you're like, maybe I'm going too far? I may get, now everybody has a phone, they could record your act and it go viral. And do you ever feel that pressure that with cancel culture that maybe you need to censor yourself?
I have in certain ways before. And I actually weirdly feel more anxiety about social media in that sense. Not even in the way you were saying, in that somebody could record a live performance or a moment with the crowd and then take it out of context. I have more anxiety with anything I post or comment or say or share on social media than I do with anything I would do live. And maybe it's just because things just travel so rapidly and get taken out of context on social media, and it's so seen and so visible. Whereas when you're doing something live on stage, there's an energy and there's context and almost like you had to be there. So where if somebody posts something on social media, they're like, well, they didn't need to post that. They knew what they were posting. Mm-hmm. They were conscious of it. They wrote it. They captioned it.
It was intentional.
It was intentional. What the fuck did they mean? And even still, there's subtext, and it might not mean what you think. And God forbid we all give each other fucking grace. Mm-hmm. God forbid anybody does that nowadays. Mm-hmm. Like a little bit of benefit of the doubt. But I think that what's missing from that you do have the benefit of in a live performance is you had to be, the vibe and the tone of what a comedian was saying, because you were there and you were probably there with that comedian for 20 minutes to an hour. So you've gotten to know who they are. Mm-hmm. So even if something gets misslipped or taken out of context, or it's a new joke that doesn't land the way it should or whatever, you just probably spent an hour with that comedian. So you can tell what they were going for. I would hope you know them a little bit to know what the context is. And yeah, and the thing is, we decide that line, comedians, and I think you can't be worried about it because you could do everything correctly and someone could still find a reason to try to cancel you.
Yeah.
You could do everything correctly. I've had experience with it with theaters here in Miami, with people in the audience across the country, with people online. I've had it. And I like to think of myself as a pretty aware comedian. I'm a pretty, make sure I punch up and I write and I know what, my stuff is autobiographical. And I've still had run-ins with that. And I think you have to kind of just draw the line. Like the second you start worrying about that, comedy dies.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just dies. And like I said, I've done everything right before, and I've still gotten you shouldn't talk about that. You shouldn't say that. We told you not to talk about that. That wasn't received well. You just have to, I don't know. It's such a hard career, comedy, and it's so rooted in free speech that oh my God, give comedians, I see people say nastier shit to each other in the drive-thru line at McDonald's. And more disgusting Karen videos on the internet. And I'm like, that's not really justifiable. That's just pure hate. You're going to come after this comedian who's trying to make art and misfired? You know what I mean? I don't know. It's different.
I mean, I think what you said is very true, that you could do everything right and there's still people who are going to be offended. But then again, if people don't understand that a comedy routine, even if it's based on your life, it's still something you wrote.
Yep.
You know, that if you say, oh, you know, I was at the Publix the other day and blah, 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 that's something that you made up probably for that routine or it's written.
Yeah.
If people don't understand that, then you didn't have them to begin with. They're not the person who are going to get it anyway.
Yeah.
So of course they're going to, on the first low hanging fruit, they're going to go and criticize
and they're often
it.
probably looking for a reason to cancel you.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I was like,
Yeah.
do you think most of these people are saying it because they are truly offended, or they are truly trying to be social justice, warriors, to use a pejorative term, as it were? Or do you think a lot of times it's just people who need attention and are looking for the low-hanging fruit of like, I gotcha. Now somebody will pay attention to me.
The latter, 10,000%. Because if we go by the term social justice warrior, if you truly cared for people and society and causes and community and you name it, your fingers wouldn't be wasting time on your phone. You'd be at the actual front lines trying to fix an issue.
Absolutely.
Like protesting, rallying, raising money, rolling up your sleeves and volunteering.
Absolutely.
That is a social justice warrior. You know what I mean? It's like, I had this recently, an experience with a former colleague and friend, and it was like how's her mental health? And then like a mutual friend was like, and I won't get into details about it, but and a former friend was like, why are you asking me? It's almost feeling gossipy that you're asking me. If you're so concerned about someone's mental health, go talk to her about it and reach out to her. So to your point, like it's 1,000% the latter. It's this social media and the current state of events and everything being so extreme and inflated. And I hate to say it, to an extent, wokeness to an extent, and I'm pretty woke,
Yeah, no. Listen, so am I, and I'm the first one to call it out.
I'm the first one to call it out. We went from enlightenment to wokeness to believing that we can cancel an entire person's like existence
Because we have what we think is a more enlightened point of view.
Right.
And it's bullshit.
An opportunity to be on your high horse.
Absolutely.
And feel better than
Self-righteousness.
people. Self-righteousness. And it's 100% what you said. It's this like, oh, I got her. It's not facing yourself in the mirror and your own wrongdoings and biases and feeling better by bringing somebody else down. And by the way, I do believe in canceling people to an extent, like P. Diddy and like rapists and murderers and like Hitler. And like, I'm not a Trump person. Like, Trump, I think, is a fucking maniac. But I think like cancellation, that whole term and everything around it's got to be changed. And I think it's like based on actions, not words.
Well, I mean, that's why we wanted to ask you that because, as fans of comedy ourselves, I think most people that are truly fans of comedy and of the art, because it's very much an art of comedy, know that comedians have always historically pushed the envelope and the line, whatever that line was at that time. And if we're now going to do that to comedians, then we're all like, we're fucked. Yeah. Because
the rest of us are fucked.
It's not a great state of affairs.
No, it's not. But I do think it's reflective of a greater pandemic that we have of people not being so like married and attached to their life and upbringing and beliefs and biases and belief system and values that they can't even enjoy a performance from someone who has a different point of view. They have to take it so personally. Like, I think that's the bigger thing, and comedy is just the symptom of that. Like, comedy isn't the root cause. Comedy is bringing out that virus in society. Like, you can't even just like disagree with people anymore. Like, it has to immediately be like this person's trash because, God forbid, I'm Democrat and they're Republican. This person's trash because
through them,
they made this choice, or they like exactly. And it's like then immediately that conversation becomes them trying to change your mind into why you should believe. And it's like, what happened to us just like hearing each other out or agreeing to disagree? And I think that that's the thing that comedy holds a mirror to. Like, I can't believe you talk about that on stage. Like,
And it's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. That's what's the funniest.
Good comedy is.
Right, yeah, that's what's the funniest.
If it's done well.
Yeah, if it's done well. There's a lot of comedians just fucking talking about bullshit up there. And good. That's what you want to do. To be hacked.
Right,
talk about bullshit.
But when it's not done well, you as the audience, you quickly know. You're like, oh, this is turning from what's supposed to be funny to cringe.
Correct. And that goes back to my point before of like, you can cancel people on the internet who you don't even know, and you're making these sweeping judgments based off of like one comment or one video or one remark, and it's like you don't know their vibe, their tone, their background. They're just somebody popping up on your phone versus spending an hour with the comedian. It's exactly what you just said. Like, you know when it's like, that's not a joke. That person's racist. Like, or that's like terrible to say. And it's often not funny too, to be honest. When it's that blatantly bad, it's bad. Like,
sometimes it's also a joke that's being workshopped, so it may not even be the final joke.
God forbid, right? Like, someone got upset. Well, I'm not done with it. I'm trying to figure it out. Like,
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So you also are not shy of taking on hecklers.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
I've seen some videos. I was seeing one yesterday where you started attacking. Well, she attacked you first. Some Christian.
Oh, it's my favorite.
Oh my God. I was like, oh my God. Like, you just nailed her.
I don't think I could.
To the cross.
I was gonna say, finish the thought.
Oh, I just nailed her because I don't think she's getting nailed by anybody. Honestly, she seemed pretty cranky, but
you take them on and head on.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, there's very few things that I think a heckler could do at this point. Maybe sparing, like, physically harming me. That would bring it. No, I'm kidding. I have health insurance now. No, I'm kidding. I don't. Just kidding. No, but there's very few things that a heckler could do now that would really throw me off. So I don't mind it. And there's not all like bad forms of heckling. Sometimes they genuinely are connecting with you and they're just trying to engage. But yeah, in her case, she like antagonized me.
Right.
Like
what was the
joke?
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic and I have like
Italian, of course.
Yeah, of course, Italian Catholic, right. And I have I got questions, and I think that's okay. I believe in God, but I have questions about religion and God and things. So I have a bit about how Jesus is a fuckboy, and it's very silly. It's stupid.
This is how we get canceled.
Yeah. I'm looking for that lady. I want to fight her. And it's very silly. And actually, most of the room was on board. But it is a very divisive joke. And that's how I know it makes people think. And when they're brainwashed by religion, you could see them sitting there and they're like, that's funny. Essentially, I'm like, he disappears and then comes back 3 days later. And you're like, I didn't hear from you. And he's like, you're never going to believe it. I died. Like, yeah. It's like a fuckboy that you don't hear from.
Well, if you put it that way.
Well, if you put it that way, babe, are you okay?
It's the ultimate ghosting, yeah.
Ultimate ghosting, right. And then he's like, I'm back, though. He is risen, or whatever. Like, I just do this whole... It's so stupid. And she came after me, and she's like, that's a no. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, no to that one. Like, I was like, this isn't like a town hall meeting. Like, you don't get to, like, upvote... She's like, no. Like, I was like, no. Are you just saying no? Like, I don't know.
Welcome to Town Hall with Brittany Brave.
Literally. I was like, are you upvoting and downvoting like Reddit, my jokes? Like, I don't know. And then what was really funny, and again, this goes back to like what comedy will expose is people who don't know themselves or are comfortable with themselves. She was like cackling because I spotted, she was right in the front at my abortion jokes. And then I made like a Jesus fuckboy joke and she was like, no. And then that's why you saw. I was like, oh, so interesting. The abortion stuff was okay, but me joking that Jesus is a fuckboy isn't. And then the room was like, immediately. And I was like, huh. I was like, weird how that works.
But again, that's going back to what we were talking a minute ago. That's one of those things that, like, if you know you're going to a comedy show,
you would think.
I mean,
unless you're going to a Christian comedy show,
right? And you know, you may not find something funny, and that's fine. And you may think a certain comedian is not your style, and that's fine. But you can't sit there and be like, I'm so offended. How did this person say this? You're at a freaking comedy show at like the improv or wherever, you know.
Yeah. I hate to say it, but it's like, I feel like somebody more famous coined this, and it's not brilliant, but it's kind of like a general rule of thumb is like, fuck your feelings nowadays. Yeah. Like, yes, your feelings are valid and they're there, but like, do us all a favor and deal with them yourself.
Not in the middle of my show.
Fuck your feelings. Yeah, like, I don't like this. No one cares. Like, that is your problem if you don't like. You have to see that even like objectively. Like, if my meal comes out at a restaurant and I'm like, I don't like this, it's my problem. Well, it's the chef's problem now too, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like if I'm sitting at a birthday party and I'm in a bad mood, that bad mood is my problem. Don't make it the other people or the audience's problem.
Or,
Nothing is that. I feel like everyone's so...
Let's take it back a little bit because we came out of like, running with talking to you.
I feel like it's the only way to do it.
With her, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm never not running. So, I'm like a hamster
out the gate.
So starting out, when did you know? Because I always love to ask comedians this: when did you know you were funny? And funnier than the average person. Like, you were funny, like comedian funny, or I could be a comedian funny.
I want to say my whole life. I knew I was funny my whole life, from as far back as I can remember. I don't know if I realized, I actually didn't really realize that being a comedian could, like, I knew it was a job, but I didn't realize I could have it as a job. Like, until like much later. I also didn't start pursuing it full time until like literally just 4 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, because I worked in PR and I was in denial and in a really bad relationship, and I was just in denial. That was it.
Mumbo jumbo stuff.
Yeah, like I just hadn't connected the dots yet for myself. Thankfully I have. But I think like I always knew growing up, out of all the traits I may have or may not have, like the one thing I always knew I had was funny. Or the one thing that came naturally to me. Like, I was always able to make my family laugh pretty effortlessly. I was very silly with my friends. I was always the one who wanted to play pretend and always the weirdo. And I used to imitate my favorite movies growing up. I used to make my parents sit through improvised remakes of my favorite movies.
What were some of your favorite movies?
Home Alone was one. Ferris Bueller's Day Off was another one. Some Disney movies I would.
So which Home Alone do you like more, the first one or the second one?
First one.
Thank you. She's not weird like you.
Okay.
Sequels suck.
That may be true.
Except for Empire.
I love the.
Maybe.
I love the sequel. I love Home Alone Part 2.
Sequels, for the most part, are almost always going to be a letdown, or they're almost always, for me, never going to be as good as the first one. Mm-hmm. Like the sequel, I don't understand ever is Hangover 2. Didn't they have a Hangover 3?
Yeah. Right. Because everything's going to be a trilogy now.
How do you redo that?
Yeah, and Hangover, the original was like lightning in a bottle.
It was amazing.
That couldn't be repeated, but here we go again.
Part of the reason why it was amazing is because it was this one night that they threw it all away at a bachelor party, and nobody expected it to get that crazy. The second and third one, you're like, didn't you guys see your own first two movies? Like, don't you guys remember what happened? X amount of years. Anyways, yeah, I always knew I was funny. And I don't know, I was just funny.
Right.
I was just weird and characters and weird. And maybe like in high school and middle school, when I started doing improv and theater, maybe that's when I knew I was like, oh, I'm like good on stage. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm pretty good at this. I'm a performer. I was always dying to be the performer. But I wanted to be everything in high school, and I'm still a little bit like that. I was class president. What else did I do? I sold bagels. We all sold bagels. What was that? It was like a Miami high school thing. I did like so many things, but I always wanted to just focus on theater and performing. And I feel like I never let the performer unleash, like, because I was so worried about grades and college and all these other things. And then I moved to New York, and I kept trying to make this time for the thing that I loved a lot, but then I would let like work and other things kind of, again, like not letting the performer. And then I don't know. I guess it was when I decided, I mean, I had a rough couple of years in my 20s. I was in a really abusive relationship, and my, life kind of fell apart in New York because of that. And I think that kind of made me.
I sort of want to ask you about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But no, because I always comedians. I always like to hear the Origin story. I say orange story.
Juice, yeah.
The Orangina story. I feel that some, comedians is probably one of those things that you're not 4 years old and like saying, I want to be a comedian. I feel it's something that you fall into little by little. You start realizing you're funny. Yeah. And then you probably try to talk yourself out of it. Like, I can't do this. I got to support myself. And then, until the day you give in to your talent and you're kind of like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. Because it's also not like, and to that credit, it's not one of the jobs you get taught in school to like aspire to be growing up.
Not a lot of people go on career day, although that's something you should totally do. Go to career day.
I've done it.
You've done it?
And it's humiliating.
Really?
Why? The kids are ruthless.
Well, they are. I just did a career day today for podcast.
Did you really?
Yeah, and it was interesting because it was me, and then it was very diverse. There was 2 lawyers, Secret Service, a guy who does something with the airport, a cop, a nurse, and a face painter.
Oh.
And you and the face painter were probably like, what's up?
We really did gel. We did.
Yeah, the creative. Yeah. I know I've done a couple career days and kids, I was like, on one of them, I was like, I am a stand-up comedian. And then the hand went up right away from one of the kids. And I got so excited. I was like, oh my God, he has a question. And then he was like, why don't I know who you are?
Oh my God.
And I was like, well.
You should totally say, well, my Netflix special is coming out next month.
It's like, your dad does.
So I do career day too at my kids' school. I go and talk about law, and I put on like a mock trial and all that. And I remember last year there was somebody she sold life insurance, and she was there on career day, and I'm here thinking like, what the hell? Like, what are you going to talk to these kids about? Like, life insurance?
Yeah, it was so...
So if your mommy or daddy dies, they can leave you some money.
Yeah, I feel like that was a sales pitch. Like, that was not career day. They were just like, has mommy been coughing a lot? Time is up.
Take her my card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Go in her wallet, get her credit card.
Oh my God, now that you're saying that, it makes sense because I remember she had candy with her card. Like she was giving out like candy with her card attached.
That's
so
really,
you may be right.
That's really, really funny. Imagine there's a career day where it's like a life insurance specialist. Somebody who works for like a funeral home.
No.
And then like a urologist or something like or like
See, I thought you were going for the hat trick and it was going to be like
what could be the third? What's the third?
The Undertaker, like the one who like does the makeup.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're like, oh, these are just all different, various funeral services. Yeah, and it's like your parents are gonna die someday. Go home and tell them that. Also, here's my card. Yeah.
So I do want to bring up something that it's a bit of a tougher conversation, but you're very vocal about it, so I feel comfortable asking you about it. Which you have been very open about domestic abuse. Yeah. Very, very open. And again, that's not something we would generally ask a guest.
Too open. They're like, Brittany, stop yelling in this Dunkin' Donuts. I'm like, women are being abused. They're like, here's your macchiato. Like, please leave. Okay.
As and again, you've been very outspoken about it. As a survivor yourself.
Yes.
And somebody who's been there.
Yes.
What is your take? Because I feel that at certain times you have to listen to certain voices depending on the situation.
Sure.
And I think that with everything going on now, people that have been victims and survivors really are the ones that really, their voices really matter. What is your whole take on everything that happened last month with like Diddy and all that and this video coming out and the fact that even with the video out, there's still a lot of people that are defending him, like, oh, he made a mistake, and so on and so forth. So, what is your take on that? And what I'm always the most curious thing about these situations, especially the ones involving celebrities. More people had to know about that. I mean, these are people that have entourages, that have very public lives. Like, you mean to tell me that nobody knew that he was doing that to Cassie and probably all the other women? I mean, I'm sure it just wasn't with her. So, like, what's your take on all this?
Great question. You know what my actual take is if I were to like kind of zoom out on the whole situation, and I can zoom in on individual things and from my experience with. the inner workings of domestic violence and what goes on behind closed doors and how different that can be and how it's received outside of closed doors. My number one take in this is, I would say recently, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, probably one of the more high profile, massive, bad cases of domestic violence, right? Because we see various other forms of abuse and wrongdoing and assault and rape and other things. But domestic violence in particular, and partner violence and relationship violence, is very taboo. Even more than, I would say, in some cases, sexual assault. Because sexual assault is so extreme and obvious and inhumane and illegal, and it's very in your face and jarring. And domestic violence quite often happens in private, or footage is buried, or reputations are paid off, or whatever, or people never know, because what happens between two people in a relationship sometimes just stays there silently until it can't anymore, usually for bad reasons, right? So my number one take is, it's interesting to me to have gone through my relationship and have a lot of parallels in the physical abuse. And it's interesting to see how the world reacts to something that I know is like very, very common. Does that make sense? Like, it's so, and that's like my biggest takeaway.
Or more common than people would like to think it is.
More common than people would like to think it is. Like, way more common. Like, way, 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 way more common. Like, right. I would run out of hands on hands if I told you women and people in my life that are like that. Laid a hand on me, punched me, I mean, it's very, 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 very common. Very common. So my number one take is, like, it's a very interesting thing as a bystander and as a survivor and someone who was so close to it, to watch the world react to it. Because the reality is, it is to incredibly famous people, and it's hotel footage, and it's extreme, and it's very public. And there's so much of that's happening literally around the world right now in private. And people, it's almost, when people are making such a big deal out of it, they should make a big deal out of it. But in my head, I'm like, this happens all the time. I'm like, all the time. And it's just, it feels foreign, or it feels novel, because it's someone, an artist you liked, or a celebrity, or somebody you revered, or people you don't know, and it's so in the public eye. And this happens to so many people whose footage never get leaked, and people who never get held accountable, and women who don't survive, people who don't survive, and you know what I mean? So the most interesting thing for me, as having had that experience, is truly kind of being on the outside and watching how everybody else reacts to it. Because it's the same. Whether it's two relatively unknown people or it's two of the world's biggest stars, the same things are happening, the same reactions are happening. So it is terrible how people are like, we don't know every side of the story. He's clearly not guilty. That's
actually what I wanted to ask you. And you know, again, I know this is very personal, and you don't have to respond. You know,
there's no way other women and people can get out of it unless
with the Puffy thing. You know, I still call him Puffy. With the Puffy thing, I mean, there is a video now. We have all seen this, and you know what's so interesting? People see that video and they gather different things. Do you know what I saw when I saw that video? I thought he was in his bath towel. That meant that he was either in the bathroom or he was sleeping.
I believe he was showering.
But that is that. But that is when she knew she could escape. That she looked for that window.
Yeah.
Because that's what I thought. I go, this man is in his bath towel. That means that she probably thought, okay, now is my own small little window where I can escape that. And it's like, that's just so fucked up, right? That's so fucked up.
I left my ex. We had one last weekend where we were trying to work on things. Spoiler alert, doesn't change. Once it happens once, it will continue to happen. And it happened again. A very bad physical fight. And luckily that weekend is when the light switch went off for me, and it was silent and internal, but it finally clicked, because I think ultimately in moments like that, which is what we saw with Cassie, you have to arrive at that you do have to arrive at that yourself. You have to, sometimes you do physically need help and you need to be removed from a situation that does happen. But I think ultimately it's two consenting adults in a relationship and you have to reconcile that and also be strong enough to leave.
Right.
Because they're always like, why didn't you leave sooner? And I'm like, this person was being mentally and emotionally worn down, probably financially worn down, like,
because it's not just physical,
right?
That's just physical,
thing, right? Because if it was just a beating, that's one thing.
It never is.
But it never is.
It never is. There could be emotional and not physical abuse, though that's a very slippery slope. Every time there is physical, there is emotional, verbal, mental, financial, everything else.
It's a package deal.
It's a package deal. And it's a kind of breakup you dread. It's a kind of heartbreak you dread. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of shame. You're probably not in the physical strength you should be in to leave the situation. Your money might not be right. You're afraid. It's a bunch of shit. But like that was me with my ex. And when the light switch went off, I escaped. Like I was supposed to leave and go back to New York City. He was living in Salt Lake City at the time. And I was supposed to go back to New York 2 days later. And I knew I couldn't tell him that I was leaving because that would have been bad. Yeah. And I would have gotten a really bad reaction. And he would have fought me on it physically and or even like manipulated me into staying. And then there was no way those next 2 days would have been any better. Like, so I very silently, like, I remember he was like, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, everything's fine. It's okay. And I waited till he was in the shower and I stepped outside his apartment and I walked 2 blocks away and I called American Airlines and I changed my flight. It was like a 5 a.m. flight and he had no idea. And then he went to bed and I went to bed and I literally woke up like hours. But I think I was in bed for an hour and a half and I woke up hours before my flight when I knew he was knocked out, silently finished packing and left his apartment. And on my way to the airport, I blocked him on everything. Everything. And I blocked him. I started looking up courts in the family court in New York, called my mom, my dad, told them everything. I had kept it a secret from them that I had visited him again. And I was like, I did. And my mom was like, oh my God. And I'm like, but this is really the last time, like, I need help. I'm asking for help and I'm doing this for real. So by the time I had touched down in New York, like, he had woken up and I was gone.
Right. So you literally had to like plan your escape.
I literally planned my escape. And I guess I like didn't know how to block somebody on email because who knows how to do that.
Right.
Like, and like he like went to like my iCloud email and he was like, oh, I don't know where you went. Like you didn't say goodbye, but like you left a bra here and like whatever. And then he's like, oh, I also noticed like I'm trying to call you and I can't get through. I guess I'm blocked again or whatever. But I like... Yeah. I literally took I landed and I, with my suitcases, went to family court in Brooklyn and I literally walked in and was like, please help me. Like, I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to die in this relationship. I need him away from me. And like, I don't know where to begin with this, but it's time and I need help. And they were like, okay. Did you
find, because this is what I really wanted to like, you that you're a survivor get at. Again, with the Diddy thing, there's so many people that are defending him, making excuses like, oh, maybe it was just one time, or, oh, maybe there's two sides to every story. Did you find in your personal life a lot of that rhetoric?
All the time. That's the thing. It's so unfortunately common, and it's, I don't know what it is. I don't know. I wish I could tell you. I think it's a couple things. I think it's misunderstanding of the issue in general and misunderstanding of how hard it is to leave and the intricacies of domestic violence and the fact that one time is one too many and one time is also never just one time and it's never a mistake. You're never like, oh man, I was at rock bottom and that was not a one time. We know this now, scenario. So I think there's this misunderstanding. I also think that when it comes to discipline and abuse in parenting and in culture, I think people have a different relationship with physical abuse, right? Like, I
was going to ask you that actually, because being that, you're Italian and we're Cuban, culturally so similar.
Oh, right? You're going to smack every now and again.
But everything, right? Like the hands, like we're talking about the hand, the food, the family. But that physicality is, it's the spanking and so, and then you stay together if you're in a marriage, if you're in a relationship. Did that have anything to do with it in your mind of like, this is also why I'm staying in this situation longer than I probably should have?
100%. Like, I was like, I have grown up around individuals with tempers. And I was not abused as a child by any means. Like, yes, I was raised Italian, so every now and again you got 5 fingers to the face if you were being a jerk. And
Cuban.
like,
Right,
you
Cuban.
know, not abused, but like
we get the
spanking or
a spanking.
we get, as you probably know, the chancleta.
The chancleta.
The belt, you
we
know.
got the wooden pasta spoon,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever. And it was like, you know, so maybe I thought about that. Like, maybe I rationalized anger in men and anger as a form of love or anger as a part of, but I mean, even going as far as like some culture, cities, people resolve things through fighting. You know, like you see it all over the country, and it's like some people are like, oh yeah, well, we just need to square up and what, and like those are people that have a different comfort level with physical abuse.
But I think that this is different, and I think we all know it.
100%.
We all know this is different because this is the power dynamic.
It is.
And it's a manipulation.
It is.
And I think
Yes.
everybody knows that.
It
Because
is.
what you were saying about cultures, 100%, because
Yeah.
that's something that I always say, especially now as a parent, that, you know, I was, like you said, I
Yeah.
grew up in a Cuban household.
Yeah.
Well, I got the chancleta, el cinto, all that. And that's not the way I would like to raise or am trying to raise my child, but I am not a victim to that. You know,
Right.
and a
wouldn't
lot
say
of
it was
people
abused.
aren't. A lot of
Right.
people aren't. That's
Right.
not to say there are not a lot of people that are abused as children, but I think that you know when it's not that and when it is just straight up abuse. And I don't think this is a gray area anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that's why like I just think that from a victim and a survivor point of view, these things are very interesting because nobody knows this like somebody like you who's lived it and the dynamic of that, and
Yeah.
that this wasn't one isolated incident. This is a systematic just state of being with that relationship. And if it happened with her, it happened with other ones. And
Absolutely. It's almost never isolated. And what I try to remind people, and but like to go back to your question about that rhetoric, it's so common. It's so like maybe he didn't mean it, maybe it was a one-time thing. What did she do to provoke him? It was just one of my favorites. That's a classic. Like, well, what did you do to make him do that? And it's like there's no world in which that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, strangers piss you off daily. Do you assault them?
Yeah.
No. Like, it's people annoy you daily. You don't, you know. So there's all of these different things and these misconceptions, but it's like, and as you know with relationships, things get blurry in regular relationships when abuse isn't even present.
Yeah.
Right? In general. Friendships,
Yeah.
work relationships, love,
Yeah.
forget love. Love is fucked. Like,
Yeah.
it's so hard and crazy. So imagine that times 100 when we're talking things getting blurred.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's even more so when it's like if you even like told me like, well, when was the first time you saw a sign of the physical abuse? Like, for the longest time I had said it was one incident that happened pretty early on in our relationship that ended with cops. I had to call the cops because I didn't know how to diffuse it, and he was kind of out of control. And I was like, I think I need to call the cops right now because I don't know how to like walk him down, get him out of my apartment, or just stop this, you know. And he had a drug problem as well too, and drinking problem and everything. And but then like,
man, what a deadly trio of problems.
oh yeah, and it's
Like,
usually
yeah,
all intertwined,
yeah.
And, or it's not, but it usually is. And I used to cite that as the first time. And then it only took through like a lot of therapy and coming out of it and having to recite things through the judicial system. It took me realizing that wasn't the first time that a physical sign of aggression. Like, there was like a night when he was really drunk and I was sober, and he came home to my apartment because obviously I was paying our rent and he was living with me. And obviously. And we got into an argument because he had lied about something, and I caught him, and I was upset. But I wasn't yelling. I was just upset, and he knew he was, but he escalated it because he was very drunk. And I was like, okay, whatever. I think I said, I'm going to go take a walk to cool off. And as I went to go leave my apartment, he kind of pushed me out of my apartment. He was like, yeah, that's a good idea, and kind of like shoved me out of my own apartment. And then when I turned around and tried to push the door back to get in, my hand was in the door, and he saw it, and he closed the door on my fingers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I chalked it up, and he chalked it up as like I was drunk and it was a mistake.
Right.
And I was like, and in my head, only subliminally, I was like, he definitely like shoved me though, right?
Yeah.
Like, but you're like,
you probably
drunk,
analyze the situation
upset,
100
I'm
times.
upset.
Yeah.
I'm not clear. He's not clear.
Right.
Like, you do all these things. It's just, it's a very messy issue, but unfortunately, all of these responses, Cassie and Diddy are very famous, but this happens to everybody.
But unfortunately, a lot of times it takes a public case
That's
like
the
that
silver lining out
to
of this.
that.
Yeah.
And I think that because I think that as fans of whomever and
My headpiece is here.
and that probably translate to in the personal life on people that aren't famous. I remember when Bill Cosby, everything happened with Bill Cosby. I was like many people, I was a huge fan of Bill Cosby. And, his image, this was so not his image. And I remember having a moment, of course, you have a moment of like, oh, this can't be true. This can't be true. But then you're like, no.
We're on woman number 12.
Right. Yeah. You're like, no. You have to reconcile that, okay, this was somebody I grew up with, that I loved his work, but he's a horrible human being. The same thing, with somebody like Diddy. I'm a fan of his music, but I mean, this is not even a discussion we could have. Mm-hmm. And I imagine that for regular folk, that's probably something that happens. And I could see that happening in family dynamics that, but he's a good father, and he's a good partner, and he provides for you, and it's so hard out there, and he
has his own demons,
right? And nobody's perfect.
That he was drinking.
Yeah.
Okay, but what happens when he's not drinking? He had trauma growing up. Oh, he made a mistake. I'd like to think that it's our way of trying to see the best in people, and we don't want to be inclined to like. That's
an optimistic.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, we try to justify, especially when you're in the relationship, you so badly want it to work, so you're finding all these things. But to your point, it's like before people are artists, they're human beings. And I also think before someone is your lover and your partner, you are coexisting. You're two human beings and two citizens, right? So I think that's where it's like, when people are, because it's hard for me too. Like, I loved Cosby. I jammed out to some of Diddy shit. Like, like, it's all hard to wrap your head around. But it's like, for me, I don't think you can separate the art and the artist. I think the art gets tainted when you see who the artist is. Because if good art is being made, it's indicative of the artist. It's an extension of the artist. So for me, I won't look at the art the same afterwards. Because it's so good when the art is good and the artist is a really good human being. That's so amazing. So it's not, because it's like when, and I know it's hard to separate, but in my head I'm always like, before they're ever a big star or an artist, they're a human being first. And will forever be.
Do you know that with Diddy, I'm currently in that sort of space because I'm a big fan of his music. I saw him in concert a bunch of times, and I even said on here, I'm like, I got to separate the art from the artist because he's like the soundtrack of my 20s and all that. But again, like when you see the video and you see how horrible it is, and now you start thinking like, this was just a moment that they captured in time. This is a much, much, much bigger picture. Now it's like, as you said, now it's like, oh, I'm jamming to All About the Benjamins, but he sucks.
It feels icky. It does. Like, Ignition by R. Kelly comes on at a wedding, and we're like, usually I don't do this. Yeah, like, it does. Like, it's, you know what I mean? It will affect.
It's funny. R. Kelly, we talked a lot about him on the show. And one of the things that upset me the most about the R. Kelly situation was that R. Kelly always told you who he was. From the Aaliyah scandal. Right. Because remember the Aaliyah scandal? That she was like 15 and he was like in his mid to late 20s?
Yeah.
Because Aaliyah's our age, would have been our age. And, then the peeing on the kid, the minor girl, and then, the whole thing that he had. And I think it was never a secret of who he was. And then 20 some years later, people were like, "Oh, let's cancel R. Kelly." I mean, R. Kelly should have been canceled in like
before cancel was a thing.
Before
canceling was a thing.
And it's like, man, it took us a while to get there.
I think as a society, that's one of the good things we could be grateful for. Like, obviously, we said like the wokeness is even getting a little out of control, but I think it's like a rubber band. Like, it's swung to like. we had to open it up to have these conversations and hold these people accountable. And maybe now it's like a little too much, where we're now like, oh, I could call out just anybody who like annoys me that I disagree with. And it's like, okay, wait, like walk it back a little bit. Right. But I just think it was a different time when we just weren't, you just didn't, or people just didn't take it serious, which is bananas to me. But I just think it was a different.
And I think also, you look, at the end of the day, people know whether you're in denial about it and you want to like not accept it. That's another thing, but people know. I mean, look, during the Me Too movement, and you know, we're totally pro women here. I mean, I believe in the Me Too movement, but like I forget the name of it. When all these stories were coming out over and over again, I forgot the comedian that dated a girl and they just had a bad date.
Aziz Ansari.
Yeah.
That one I was like, what's going on?
And everybody knew that it was like bogus, right? And I think that with the domestic violence, people know whether they want to accept it or not. You know, even the public, you know.
To also like go back to the people's reaction to it, to add another layer, there is, again, like with comedy, projection and denial, like being like, was abuse a lot of like sometimes women that react negatively, I would put money, may have abuse in their relationship, and it makes them uncomfortable to see it get called out because they're not ready to call it out or to leave. Or you grew up around abuse and it's normalized for you, or you are an abuser often. And so you're almost blind, like, and I'm not taking a side. You're like, do you understand there's no side to this? When you're like, well, let's hear, maybe he didn't mean it. Like, then that always makes me think, like, why is that the side you're taking? That's so interesting.
I think it's an illness. It really is. I mean, and I don't say that by any means to excuse him, but it is. There was somebody in my family. Right in the head if you're doing there was somebody in my family who, and again, he saw it from his father, and he had 3 subsequent wives, and he abused all 3 of them. Yep. And it was really terrible because I remember as a kid seeing this, and my parents had such a great marriage, and relationship and respect that, you know, as a family we would be horrified because it's like the kids now would be subject to this violence, and my mom would cover my eyes and like run out of the house, you know, and it was one of those situations, you know, when it was like a birthday party or something, like a family gathering, and it's an illness. Like you can't stop it, and it's just horrible. Well,
so I actually wanted to fast forward, you know, kind of like try to transition from.
Well,
this
I wanted to say
something a little
I wanted
lighter.
to transition too. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story, though. I think that's very important, you know, especially as a comedian. You know, sometimes comedians can be a little bit shut off in terms of like their personal lives, and this is something very, very personal and very, very private for a lot of people. And I mean, I'm sure you've helped out people and shed a light to it, and you're on the other side, and those are the stories that you always like to hear. You know, you're thriving now, you have your career, you're on the other side, so you're a survivor. So thank you for sharing your story, not only to us, to everybody that you share it to.
Thank you.
That's very important.
Thank you for receiving it, because the last thing I was going to add about that is like, when talking about the biases around this and everything, it's, I think in general, a lot of people, and it goes back to comedy, like if it's something that didn't happen to them or it's really bad and big, depending on your level of awareness, I'm not even going to say wokeness, but like awareness and social intelligence, you can end up shutting the door on an issue just because you don't know about it, or don't want to, or it's big and bad, and it makes you, and that's what I think ends up happening with something like this. So that's why I do think it's really important to talk about it and be an open book at any stage of the process. If you're going through it, went through it, helping people through it, whatever it is. Because if I were to give people the benefit of the doubt, sometimes I think they react that way, or they turn a blind eye or whatever, because it's like too much for them. A little bit. Like they're like, oh, I don't even know how to wrap my head around hitting someone, or you know what I mean? But that's also not any way to live. Like you have to talk about it.
It's a reality.
It's a reality, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I was excuse me. So I was actually gonna say, you know, you mentioned you've only been doing this for like 5 years, the comedy thing.
4-ish.
Four years or so. Do you feel like, you know, I'm trying to move us back into the comedy here. You know, as a survivor, do you think that was something that motivated you to say, like, you know what, fuck this, I'm going to give this a shot?
It did.
And just, you just said, like, you know what, I've been through the worst of it, and now
I'm on my way out.
Let's laugh at this.
Yeah, my life was destroyed. It was just like gutted from the inside, and it was weirdly the best thing that ever happened to me, because it just kind of my life was on the line, my relationships were on the line, my money, my safety, my wellness, my everything was on the line. And when I was able to leave him, I just kind of knew the current state of affairs couldn't stay. Like, it was like it made me
across the line.
Across the line. Like, I was like, I'm fucking miserable doing PR. Why am I not doing comedy? Everybody in my life has always told me to go be a comedian, how funny I am, how whatever. Like, why am I not doing that? It's time to go do that. Like, I need to go do that. And then it was like, I don't want to live in this apartment. Okay, I'm not going to.
Right.
I don't want these shitty friends that I know aren't really my friends. Okay, I'm going to make distance. I'm going to dye my hair. I'm going to, like, I think, like, there was an element of me that didn't like myself before that relationship and during that relationship, and I didn't realize it. And I thought I was fine with how I was as a person, and I thought I loved and liked myself plenty, but I think I look back and I really didn't. Like, you know what I mean? Or it was just growing pains in the worst of ways. But.
And so she shifted to the most well-armed and welcoming of careers. Stand-up comedy.
Stand-up comedy.
I'm like, you think I'm afraid that you don't laugh at my jokes? My ex beat me, bitch. Like, try hurting my feelings, okay?
It's like, take that, Christian, who's offended by my jokes.
You want to heckle me?
Like,
go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll send you to court. Like, jail.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, and, we're going to wrap up soon. We've been talking for like an hour.
It's over an hour.
Yeah.
Over an hour.
Yeah. Our Hanguiando episodes are usually 20 minutes, but, but that's because we really like her. We really, really, really like her.
I like really, really, really like you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm moving in.
Trust. If we didn't, we know how to turn these interviews short quick.
Oh,
things are going south.
It's like, thank you for coming for Pero. Let me tell you, just said your origin story. You have a great day. Anyway, so
give us the blurb.
Because you have lived, maybe you were born up in the New York, New Jersey area, but let's say New York, but you were raised in Miami. You're very familiar with both ends of it. Mm-hmm. What is your take on all the New Yorkers moving to Miami? You like it?
No, but like, whatever. Miami and New York have always been in love. Like, they are. Like,
you think so?
Yeah, there's always been a tie there. And it's like funny.
We both liked freestyle music in the 80s and 90s. That is true.
Yes. And we both like Italians and Hispanic people a lot. Like, we're both like, we have a lot more in common. And I think that's why we're like frenemies. And I also think that, like, Miami has created the beef with New York. Like, Miami's very, like, fuck you, New York, whatever. And New York's like, who even are you?
We're Miami.
New York is you in the Rusty Pelican elevator.
Literally. You're like, this is the Rusty Pelican. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm from New York.
Bringing it back to the beginning.
What is we don't even have pelicans in New York, I don't think. Like, what's happening? So, I think obviously they want to move to Miami because it's like, I think it's a compliment. Like, it's like not distance-wise, it's not too far, right? Mm-hmm. But also B, like, it's like similar in energy to them as well too. So like, it's not, yes, they want to escape the weather and the pandemic and the rent prices and all of the things, but I also think that, like, yeah, like,
you think New York and Miami are more similar than Miami and LA?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, Miami and LA are similar weather-wise.
Traffic. No public transportation.
Hispanic culture.
Slower than New York. Miami's fast like New York, but also slow like LA in the same time. And also, I think LA and Miami are most similar in their superficiality.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't know what someone's job is or if they're legit or not. Whereas in New York, if you're not legit, you're just not gonna make it. Like, there's no showing up 45 minutes late. There's no not knowing your shit.
I have mixed feelings about it. Miami's a city that's been built on immigration, and we need to embrace that. My only problem with a lot of people moving from New York, actually from anywhere, that are moving now to Miami, usually it's like people that are affluent or middle affluent, if you will, that are moving down here, is that, they're sort of changing the narrative a bit of the city, which, and not in the way that people, specifically immigrants, have done so in the past, have added to the fabric of Miami.
Well, I think they're not contributing, they're changing.
It's more like they're changing, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the part where I get a little about. And in the process, there's a lot of them, not all of them, are creating their own narrative. Like, oh, Miami was a dump 10 years ago. No, it wasn't. Like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, no, I could totally see that. But I would argue that happens anywhere, wherever there's like a lot of LA people move to Austin, or a lot of, I think that tends to happen when there's like a big migration. And then I will also call Miami out on that, because like, yeah, like New Yorkers started coming down here, but Miami also started opening up New York chain restaurants.
Yeah.
And building fucking Brickell.
Yes.
And downtown to look like New York. And like New York brands and a New York style of doing things. So Miami also like threw away a little bit of its identity to go be a New York
They sold their soul to the devil.
They sold their soul a little bit too.
At least east of 95.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. And it's like rent prices, everything. Like they started but I also think that's what happens because like Miami's such a young city. So it's so impressionable. Which is exciting because there's such a large potential to like make an impact on this city. But I also think Miami's kind of like a slutty teen right now, or like in her early 20s.
Never related more to a city in my life.
Right? Best years of my life. Okay. But like, I that's where I see her as like she's thriving and she's fertile and she's riding off of dad's money and she's expanding and whatever, but she doesn't really know who she is yet. Like that's how I kind of see.
I love this.
I've never heard it put that way, but I think I've never heard anything make more sense either. Like,
Yeah, like so she's influenced easily, but she's beautiful and she's young and whatever. And it's like, you give her X amount of years more and she'll be bitter like New York. Like she'll be a little locked in and more, she'll know herself more. Like a city like New York's been around like triple the amount of time Miami has, so it's...
Well, I mean, I guess a way of looking at it is that we should be honored that New Yorkers would consider even moving down here.
You really should, because we have good taste. New Yorkers have like really good taste. So, yeah. We're not going anywhere else on the East Coast.
That is true.
Right?
That is true.
We're not going to Atlanta. No. We're not going
I like Atlanta.
I do too, but like, come on. Like really, like we're like Boston.
You just said it like the ultimate Miami girl. Like your face, everything just oozed West Kendall. Like when you said that. Like,
no, like we're not doing that. We're not going to Boston, and it's like right there.
God, no.
God, Connecticut. If we wanted to go anywhere, it'd be Connecticut, and we're like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So where else is New York gonna go? They're like, what's kind of like just as cool as us? Oh. Miami. They're like, yeah, they can stay. Like,
Jacksonville.
Panama City Beach.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's a reason. There's a reason why South Florida is where everybody goes. We're like, just ignore everything else and just come all the way. Just come here. Come here. Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, thank you for joining us and leaving us with really the end thought here is Miami is a lovely young woman and New York is an old crone. That's that's really the takeaway.
New York is a hag.
Is an old hag.
Brittany Brave said that.
Yes.
It's a menopausal hag. And Miami is its slutty granddaughter.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know what? That's the t-shirt you need to have for your next show.
I should make merch.
Yes, that's the merch.
New York grandma, New York hag, Miami slut.
No, granddaughter. Like you have to make sure it's
it's a family. Family
like New York. Yeah, I got to work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, New York grandma, Miami slut or something. New York grandma, Miami teen.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. I am so glad you came by the show.
I'm so glad you had me. Yeah.
Like,
this
honestly,
is amazing.
I'm so glad we bumped in the elevator.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you talked shit to my face about how I didn't know Rusty Pelican.
Yeah.
You did it nicely, but I also was like, this guy's not letting it go.
You know what's so funny? That after you said I didn't let it go, I brought it up later in the day. Like, I think to Evie's. Like, I brought it up. I'm like, do you know she's never been to the Rusty Pelican?
I just met her. She's great. I'm going to get her on the pod. She's never fucking been here before.
You didn't notice when they made it a topic, the keynote speaker at the League of Women Voters?
I went to the bathroom.
It was all about you.
Yeah.
What's more Miami than that?
Exactly. Hello.
Exactly. So where can our listeners find you on Instagram? It's just at Brittany Brave.
At Brittany Brave. I have my own podcast. It is called Big Yikes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It is all about vulnerability and fucking up and making mistakes as a human being. It's fun. I would love to have you guys on.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And then where will I be? I'm on tour. I have a bunch of Florida dates coming up. Summer Florida dates.
Ooh, okay.
That will be a little bit of my farewell tour because I will be spending more time in New York. Still splitting my time between New York and Miami, but I got to go back to Grandma in New York. The hag, Grandma.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll be in Boca, Orlando, Tampa, and I will have later this year a very big Miami headline. Date that I can't
all
reveal
those Florida
yet.
dates sound thrilling.
Are you gonna be doing shows in New York too?
I will be. I'll be all over.
Okay. Yeah, because we have listeners all over the country, so that's
amazing. Yeah. I'm on tour. Go to my website, BrittanyBrave.live.
But are you going to Cambodia? We have listeners in Cambodia. I'm just saying
I don't know how to. I gotta write jokes for that. I don't know.
That's how she'll finally get canceled.
I will.
Cambodia.
Cambodian jokes.
Somebody won't tell me that you can't joke about that.
Right.
And I'll be like, my bad. I'm sorry.
We'll see her in the news. American comedian Brittany Brave.
Dumbass, ignorant American comedian makes obviously offensive Cambodia joke. Gets shot in the head in the middle. Canceled.
Wow.
Effectively.
You're right. Effective immediately.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much. I'm so glad we met. Honestly,
Yeah,
like it's been a blast. We're ending because it's an hour already and like 20 minutes, and if not, you'd be here for like 3 days. So.
Yeah.
So I have to
And that's
finish packing
kidnapping.
and
Yeah.
do all that.
I mean, if that we would have bought food.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We didn't think ahead. We didn't cater. Sorry.
It's okay. Next time.
Okay.
Next time.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was awesome, Brittany. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pero Let Me Tell You is co-hosted by Darian Borges and Ismaeliano, produced by Ismaeliano, and our theme, Pero Let Me Tell You Freestyle, is composed by Michael Angelo Lomlaplex, the official gay guy. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes.